Hello and welcome back to the Leaderboard Trophy tournament of 2025. If you remember the last video that I showed of this tournament, then you might remember that thanks to winning my single two-player game in stage 1, I just barely managed to finish in the top 9, and with that I'm still in the tournament. Now in stage 2 every player just plays a single game. We four players that you see in this game will play a 4-player game, then there are 3 that are playing a 3-player game and 2 that are playing a 2-player game, and the winner of each game will move on to the finals. So now, I of course will try to win this game. If not, then a second or third place would at least collect me some more points for the leaderboard. But ideally, of course, I would like to win and then move on to the final round where the top 3 players will play it out in one 3-player game. But that won't be easy because I have some tough opposition here. We actually have some very recent international championship winners here. Grozz, just if you have maybe seen it in my last video, just has won the currently concluded international championship season for the first time. So he is the current international champion. The season before that, DANeo managed to win the international championship with a very strong result. The season before, Cengiz won, but the season before that, PV4 was able to win the international championship. So a lot of international championship winners that I have to play against. Definitely some strong 4-player players, and yeah, it will be interesting to see how that game will be going. But now, without further ado, we are going to take a look at the leaders and wonders. And yeah, there is some theater synergy in H3. Actually, all the leaders are there. Marlene Dietrich, Fleming, and Chaplin. There's also the Hollywood, so that's certainly something that can work, but it's of course not that easy to pull off in a 4-player game. There's also Gandhi to hide behind. Also, the Manhattan Project is there for the military. We have some lab and science synergy. There's Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. There's also the space flight. We have the Red Cross, which is interesting. Also, Marie Curie is there. Then in H2 we have the Railroad and James Watt. We have some culture leaders with Anthony Gaudi and maybe Darwin. We have Nobel as a strong economical leader. Harvard College is a strong economical wonder. We have all of the 3 military action leaders with Napoleon, Catherine, and Robespierre. We have 1 military action leader in H1 with Jan Žižka. Barbarossa and Nostradamus can help with the strength. Saladin is there, Michelangelo together with maybe the St. Peter's Basilica or just some strong wonders and some iron production. Gutenberg is there, but no Leonardo. And yeah, there's not a lot of colonization payoff in that game, no Cook, no Suez Canal, so that's something that's missing here. PV4 is playing in first position. I think the first pick for him is relatively straightforward. He just takes the pyramids here. DANeo will then just take the engineering genius, isn't willing to take either of those leaders or wonders. Then it's my turn. I could of course consider taking the Rome Roads. I think it's a very strong wonder, maybe especially in 4-player games, so it maybe could be fine to just commit to that wonder and then hoping that I will get a somewhat fine leader together with it. But I decided that there are still a lot of cards available for relatively cheap, so I decided that I am not willing to pay that big of a price for the Rome Roads here. And I thought maybe that's actually a situation where it is maybe time to pick the Colosseum again. There's also the Colossus, which is a fine wonder, but there's no colonization payoff. And I think generally 4-player game is maybe the player count where the Colosseum is the strongest. Happy Face sources are not that much represented. Additional military action sources are contested by the players. There's only 1 copy of strategy, so I think the Colosseum is just a very fine wonder to have in a 4-player game, so I thought it's probably time to take that Colosseum for myself here. The question is then, what do I take together with the Colosseum? I thought that maybe it could be actually just fine to take the Colosseum, Moses, and the Frugality, and I do think that would be very fine, getting a leader or wonder and a yellow card already, just taking 3 cards as my first pick in 3rd position, certainly not bad. At the end, however, I decided to take the Colosseum plus Ashoka. I'm playing in 3rd position. I think Ashoka can work quite well there. It's not a clear pick, because there are maybe not that many transitional leaders, no Columbus, no Eleanor. There's Barbarossa, who can maybe work nicely as a transitional leader, potentially Gutenberg as well, but there are also leaders that like to be elected early with Saladin, Nostradamus, maybe, potentially Isabella, potentially Jan Žižka, so Maybe Moses could actually be the correct pick here. Maybe at the end I was just a bit too afraid, and I just think Ashoka is quite strong, and maybe having a leader and a wonder that I don't like too much. I at the end didn't like too much having, but maybe it could be fine here to prioritize Moses plus frugality over just having Ashoka. But on the other hand, Ashoka has just quite some strong potential, especially in the later seeds. At the end, I rather picked him than Moses plus frugality. I could have also taken Ashoka plus a yellow card, leaving myself open for Wonder, but then probably I will either get Hanging Gardens or no HA Wonder. I could take Colosseum plus just a yellow card, but I think it's better to already commit to a leader here. Grozz goes for Aristotle and Colossus, so that's a solid combination. Could have also gone for Rome Roads and Moses, but decides that he rather wants to have that combination. Now it's PV4's turn. He, interestingly, is willing to take Hammurabi for 3 civil actions here, so that's quite expensive. Could have taken Sansu. Maybe doesn't necessarily want to push the event deck a lot with having Pyramids against Colosseum and Colossus, but could maybe still put some fine neutral events or something into the deck. But he is willing to pay that many civil actions for Hammurabi here, and the next turn in the first position there's not that much to do often anyway, so I think it can work out fine, but it's still somewhat expensive. He builds a mine. That of course means that DANeo doesn't get Hammurabi, who otherwise would have been able to get him. And with that, DANeo will now himself go for Sansu, takes the Rome Roads, elects Sansu to get the additional draws, builds a mine, and with the Engineering Genius can even just finish the Rome Roads at the next turn if the card row doesn't have anything interesting to offer. Now it's my turn, and I think the turn is relatively straightforward and nothing really that I want to take for expensive, so I just elect Ashoka, build a mine, increase my population. Now the only question is which yellow card to take. With a normal leader, maybe you would go for the Urban Growth here, as it's just the most efficient yellow card, but here I think there are 2 big reasons to go for the stockpile. First of all, with having Ashoka, I don't necessarily want to use my yellow card at the next turn, and it might be more important to just at any time have the ability to play it, to make space in my hand later on in H1. And also with taking a card that isn't in a discard spot, I accelerate the card row, making it maybe more likely that there will be more colors revealed, and so that I hopefully can activate the full Ashoka bonus already at the next turn. So I went with the stockpile here. I draw 2 cards, the Trade Routes Agreement and the Reign of Terror. Grozz goes for Aristotle, builds a mine, and takes the frugality. Then PV4 increases his population, builds the second lab, and he uses Hammurabi to reach out to take the iron for 3 civil actions. Doesn't have the science to go for it already at the next turn unless he gets helps from the development, but still wants to secure that copy, and to be honest, the alternatives in the row are also not really that exciting. Also, I was a bit unhappy to see that big chunk of yellow cards coming down the row, so not that many colors on the row. Then you will just finish the Rome Roads, just gets 2 civil actions out of the way. The Warfare will drop down to 1 civil action for me, Isabella not, so I have to see. Activating the full Ashoka bonus might be a bit expensive, because taking Isabella for 2 I think is not really the most efficient use of civil actions. In my politics phase, I don't do anything. Maybe I could have offered a Trade Routes Agreement, but at the end I just passed the politics phase. I take the warfare here to at least get a little bit of the Ashoka bonus going, however was not really happy to do that. Normally, as you know, I'm quite fine with taking the warfare, but this time I have the Colosseum, so I have already a source for an additional military action, and with that I don't think I really need the warfare, but it could still be fine to have. Maybe I get into Republic later on, and maybe it can be an idea if I have enough science to then play the warfare to at least be on 4 military actions, or maybe the Colosseum gets destroyed with ravages quickly and I have the warfare as a backup. But for now, the only purpose of the warfare is basically to at least get an additional resource out of Ashoka, which is of course not ideal if you have to take such a card. That maybe won't do anything at the end, so I wasn't too happy about this. And also generally it's a bit challenging how I should spend my civil actions here. I could maybe spend my civil actions very effectively with just building 2 steps of the Colosseum, increasing my population or something, but at the end I wanted to also get my second lab going, so I built a second lab. I take the cultural heritage, the additional science I think hopefully will be useful, and then to be somewhat civil action efficient, I just play the stockpile. I don't go into consumption yet, so I accumulate still a bit more food. I will have just enough food to increase my population 2 times at the next turn, and then at least I get an additional resource out of Ashoka, but so far I wasn't too happy about the start, and me having to take those maybe not the most efficient cards. Also, we can see that in hindsight, the urban growth might have been better, because I could have just built a second lab with the urban growth, and then instead of playing the stockpile, I could have taken the frugality, basically getting 1 resource and 2 food out of 2 actions instead of only 1 resource and 1 food. I draw the blunder on the naval trade agreement. Grozz takes the second copy of iron for 3 civil actions and the urban growth, so is also willing to reach out for that. And with Aristotle, he might be able to score an additional science with taking a technology at the next turn, and then he can already get into iron at the next turn potentially. PV4 can't go for the iron yet, no development has been revealed yet, and then with that he just starts working on the pyramids, takes the urban growth, the frugality 1 and the reserve, so just takes some yellow cards for 1 civil action. DANeo seeds, and the development of religion is revealed. He doesn't have a free population. I also don't have a free population, with just having played the stockpile. Grozz and PV4 have a population to take advantage of that development. DANeo this turn is willing to pick the alchemy for 2, takes Isabella, elects her, and increases his population, so he's not willing to, or maybe not able to, upgrade a tactic with Sun Tzu, and also doesn't want to keep him any longer, instead just wants to get the additional resource from Isabella, and at the next turn he can then play the alchemy and build an alchemy lab directly to save a civil action and also to spend the many resources that he will be having. Now it's my turn. As you can see, I offered a trade routes agreement this turn. Maybe I could have offered it already the next turn. Maybe there could have been a higher chance that it would have been accepted, but maybe it would have been rejected anyway. I offer it this turn because it would actually improve my turn. If I would be able to use the food as a resource, I could just spend 3 actions to finish the Colosseum, and maybe my turn would at the end be a bit more efficient. But Grozz rejects the pact. I thought he will maybe soon get into iron, so maybe being able to use resources, food could potentially be interesting for him. Maybe I could have offered it also to DANeo, who has a lot of resource saved up, but yeah, at the end the pact gets rejected. With not being able to finish the Colosseum, I have to do something different to get out of corruption. Just building some steps isn't enough for that, so I increase my population. I increase my population again. And then it's a bit of a question. I have some different variations that I can do here to use my civil actions. I could just play it very civil action efficiently and build 2 steps of the Colosseum, but I have now the chance to get the full Ashoka bonus going, and I thought probably that's worth it. I can maybe pick the irrigation here. There is not that much synergy for it. There is no Machu Picchu, no ocean liner service, maybe the Statue of Liberty to get some additional yellow tokens. There's at least Barbarossa, so and it's just not bad, I think, to have that copy in hand. So I thought probably it's worth it to take the irrigation, but I was also eyeing that masonry. I can get the masonry here before having finished my HA wonder. There are some interesting H1 wonders for the masonry with the Forbidden City and the Great Wall. There's also the railroad in H2, which is a very strong wonder. So I thought it could be a very interesting masonry game. But then the question is, do I actually take both irrigation and masonry, or do I just take the masonry, maybe even just develop it, or build a step of the Colosseum, but then I don't get the food bonus going from Ashoka? So it was quite a close call for me at the end. I was willing to get the full Ashoka bonus going and to get the masonry, as I think the masonry is potentially quite strong for me here. And at the next turn I can maybe play the masonry, finish the Colosseum, and thanks to having those 3 colors in hand, I will maybe be able to maintain the full Ashoka bonus from now on. I draw some new cards, the Wealthy Territory and the Uncertain Borders. Grozz takes the Free Religion, takes the Theology. With that he gets the 1 science that he needs to get 2 iron upgrades going this turn. Isn't willing to take Warfare or Cartography, interestingly. PV4 takes the Free Religion as well, can this turn also start going for some iron upgrades. Takes the Code of Laws for 2 civil actions and then increases his population. Code of Laws with the pyramids on low science, maybe not that ideal. Maybe he could have also gone for swordsman, maybe the warfare, but I guess that also wouldn't be too interesting. Maybe could have played the reserves already. But I mean, getting even more civil actions can still be quite strong, but I think in his position, the Code of Laws is maybe not the highest priority. Then it's DANeo's turn. He seeds and opens the development of warfare. This time I will have a free worker to take advantage of that. He also can take the free warrior, increases his population, builds an alchemy lab directly, then takes the iron, so I think a relatively clean turn for him. Now it is my turn. I decide to offer the naval trade agreement to DANeo to maybe get a bit of help from with some additional blue tokens, but he rejects the pact, doesn't want to have an additional colonization force. He has seeded the 2 events so far, had Sansu and Isabella, so I thought maybe he could have already seeded some colonies, maybe would have been willing to accept this pact. And I this turn need to get out of corruption, and the only real way to do it is with finishing the Colosseum. I want to finish it with the masonry, and after having finished it I have 1 civil action left. There's a copy of Code of Laws available for 1 civil action for me, but I don't have the most science available. I mean, I have the cultural heritage, but I have already invested into the masonry, which is maybe a little bit of a luxury tag. Investing into the Code of Laws maybe would be a bit too much, and also I have the chance to grab a military tech here for only 1 civil action, the swordsman, and at the end rather went with that, so that I can maybe at some point go for that. Especially DANeo has revealed a legion tactic, so I know that I have a tactic to work with. The Great Wall is in the deck. I have gone for the masonry, so the Great Wall is generally an interesting wonder for myself and is even stronger when I have the swordsman, so I think the swordsman is probably the better pick here than the Code of Laws. I draw some cards, a colonization card, the heavy cavalry in the raid. There's no Genghis Khan in the game for the heavy cavalry. Grozz this turn gets Jan Žižka for 1 civil action and decides to go for him, increases his population 2 times, and then takes the Code of Laws with Aristotle to score another science. Interestingly, is willing to skip an iron upgrade or building a lab for all of this. PV4 offers an open borders agreement to me, which I accept. It's of course helpful for PV4, but I think I still have to accept it. That makes the warfare maybe even... that does even less now, at least short term, but the additional military action might still be helpful for me. And PV4 this turn will take the monarchy, finishes the pyramids, takes the breakthrough, and then increases his population. That's of course also an argument to taking the Code of Laws earlier. He had still some hopes maybe to do a monarchy revolution. He might be able to do it at the next turn, and then of course it is not bad to have the Code of Laws in hand to upgrade the monarchy at some point later on. And at the next turn he can maybe just do revolution and potentially upgrade an iron mine or something. DANeo seeds and opens the development of craft, so additional resource for everyone. He upgrades the lab, takes the swordsman to have it for his legion tactic, and increases his population 2 times. Is able to get out of corruption like this. Has still a lot of resource lying around, but he has 2 additional blue tokens from Isabella and 1 from the Roman road, so he is in a position where he can actually store up quite a bunch of resources. At my turn, I was happy to see that the Great Wall just barely dropped into the 1 civil action area for me, and thanks to the masonry, I can potentially even just take and finish it, giving me a nice way to get out of corruption. I was willing now, with the plan of going for the Great Wall and knowing that I can soon go for the Legion tactic and have the Swordsman to start pushing some strength events. Maybe I could have been even brave enough to push the Uncertain Borders here, but the thing is, Grozz has Jan Žižka. I know that he has the medieval army tactic. I know that he will be able to get knights. He has the Colossus, so I instead just seeded the Reign of Terror in, and so that I maybe don't reward him for his strength push, and I thought he probably will be able to get even stronger than me even when I go for the Great Wall. And so I seed. The event revealed is the development of politics, giving everyone some additional draws. And then I will indeed just take and finish the Great Wall, getting out of corruption like this. It's just, I think, the cleanest way to play this turn. I mean, instead of finishing the Great Wall, maybe I could have developed a swordsman, increased my population, build a swordsman, then maybe either already this turn or maybe at the next turn copy the Legion tactic and then finish the Great Wall later on. I do think maybe that could have been an idea, but I think it's also just very clean to get the Great Wall out of the way, having that already finished. Getting the 1 culture production earlier, I guess that's only an extremely small reason, but yeah, I felt like that's probably fine doing it like this, and then I can build a swordsman at the next turn. I could play the fighting band here to go up to 5 strength, however, I thought that I will soon be on 3 units with the Great Wall, and with that I rather wanted to copy the Legion tactic. As you can see, I keep 1 aggression in hand here, because as soon as I build a swordsman at the next turn, I am already at 9 strength. I can maybe upgrade a warrior to swordsman, then I'm already at 10. And when we, for example, take a look at DANeo's civilization, he can of course go for swordsman, but he is also stuck on 2 military actions. So if I go for a bit of a strength push, I thought it's not unimaginable that I can actually go for successful aggression at some point. I draw even 2 more aggressions here. Grozz seeds, opens the development of science, builds the 2nd lab using the urban growth, finishes the Colossus, elects Jan Shishka and upgrades the mine, and very interestingly he is willing to not take the knights here. There are of course still all 3 copies. 2 of them of the row, 1 still left in the deck, and maybe he just didn't find a clean way to implement taking the knights into this turn, but yeah, interesting that he's willing to take the risk of not getting them. I guess he can always copy to the Legion tactic, but I do think that would be quite a bit worse than just starting to build some knights here with Jan Shishka. But maybe he will get rewarded. I guess both DANeo and I maybe don't have the highest incentive to take the knights. PV4 seeds, the development or the event deck is flipped now. The development of planning is revealed. The options for that are development of markets, civil life and agriculture. Interestingly, PV4 takes the 2 food from the development of markets, and then after doing the revolution to monarchy, he first of all can develop the code of laws actually. With the civil action, I stand still a civil action. With the military action of Hammurabi, I stand still a civil action left, and uses that to get out of corruption with upgrading a mine. And with taking the 2 food, he has now enough food to increase his population at the next turn, in case the age should end. Guess he would have also the reserves, but I guess that's still fine doing it like this. And then he builds a warrior, reveals his own Legion tactic, making him the strongest at the moment. DANeo seeds and opens the Reign of Terror, gets punished for seeding as the weakest here. I put the Reign of Terror into the deck. DANeo will lose the population now. He will start going for his iron upgrades, goes for 2 upgrades, and then also develops the swordsman, building 1 so that he is the strongest now. And we can see here that Grozz also gets rewarded for his decision of not taking the knights. Both of them weren't taken. I can't take both away, and I probably won't take neither of them, and then Grozz just gets the knights for cheaper here. At my turn, I decide, I think, to not push, as I will get stronger and maybe can profit from strength events, and also I felt that reds could be a very bad event for me here, and I rather wanted to increase my population now. I used the development of civil life from the development of planning to develop the swordsman for discount, now even for only 2 science with the discount from the Colosseum and the development of civil life. I can then build a swordsman going up to 9 strength. I can also go for an upgrade going up to 10 strength, maybe making things a bit awkward for my opponents, and for now just being the strongest. Then I will increase my population once to get out of corruption, and then the question is, what leader do I go for? As I, at the next turn, will have probably lost Ashoka, and there are some leaders in a row. I could of course wait, maybe I could get Nostradamus or Barbarossa, but I felt maybe it's better to just go for a leader this turn. There's Saladin available for 1 civil action. He would be a very solid choice, and in a lot of situations I would probably go for him here. But I came to the conclusion that in this particular situation it's actually the right move, or maybe the right move, to take Gutenberg for an additional civil action over Saladin. So that's maybe something that you don't see too often, but of course, if Gutenberg is in the right setup, he's just giving you more value than Saladin. He gives me also an additional civil action, but also discounts and culture. And on top of that, he is also giving me a civil action right away. Saladin, when I go for him, is only giving me the civil action at the next turn. But with Gutenberg, I can take this alchemy for free this turn. If I would have gone for Saladin, I might have also ended up taking this alchemy, but would have to spend a normal civil action in it, and Saladin wouldn't have given me a civil action this turn already, meaning that I can actually play the exactly same turn with taking Gutenberg for an additional civil action, as I would with taking Saladin for cheaper here. And then I thought we are at the end of the age, I can maybe go for some Gutenberg activations, and ideally I will then get a replacement at some point. I have 2 happy faces from my wonders. Darwin could work fine, Nobel could work fine, Napoleon can always be fine, Catherine could be fine, maybe James Watt, as I have missed out on the iron. So I thought there are a lot of leaders that maybe can work relatively early for me also, and with that I thought maybe just going for Gutenberg as a transitional leader is the right call, even if I have to pay an additional civil action here. There was one thing that I needed to consider though, and that is that with going for Gutenberg, of course I will go for the alchemies rather slowly, and with going for Saladin I would have the option to maybe just develop the alchemy at the next turn, go for an upgrade, get those upgrades generally going quicker. I could then even not go for the last upgrade from warriors to swordsmen, then when I replace Ashoka I will lose the resource production, but if I don't upgrade this warrior I would still have 4 resources at the next turn, which would with the masonry be enough to go for 2 alchemy upgrades, and I could get my science production going very quickly, and because of that I thought, maybe I should actually still go for Saladin. But I thought I have actually also something interesting to do apart from upgrading to alchemy at the next turn, and that is to build another swordsman. Building another swordsman puts me at 13 strength, and DANeo, with the population that he's having, has somewhat a limit. He can upgrade those 2 warriors to swordsmen, then he's at 8 strength, but he doesn't really have a free population. Can maybe put that 1 free population into bread and circuses, but I thought it's kinda hard for him to even reach something like 10 strength, and I thought it's not unlikely that maybe I will actually be able to pull off an aggression against him when I do this. Also, maybe it makes it again more likely that I'm actually the strongest, despite maybe Grozz starting to go for knights now, and with that I thought it can maybe be fine to not start upgrading to alchemies at the next turn, and instead just building a swordsman, and with that, that works actually quite nice with Gutenberg, so that I can take the alchemy with him this turn, develop it with him at the following turn, and then at the following turn start some upgrades with him, and with that I ended up actually taking Gutenberg here for an additional civil action. And with my last civil action I increased my population, as I don't have knowledge about rats and was just happy to get that additional population out. I draw some cards here, even another aggression. Grozz Seeds opens the strategic territory, which he's able to win, but he has to pay quite a price for it. But the good news for him is that he actually has quite a bunch of defense cards in hand, meaning that he wins it for just a warrior. More he couldn't have bid anyway, as he had just that 1 warrior, and now he can make a very nice transition into the medieval army tactic with Shishka, builds 2 knights, is at 12 strength, and thanks to his 2 farms has 2 copies of the tactic. Also takes the alchemy for I think even 2 civil actions, interestingly, but allows him to invest into something at the next turn. PV4 seeds and a cultural influence is revealed. Grozz will gain 3 additional culture. DANeo gets no culture at all. PV4 also still needs a new leader, decides to go for Nostradamus, who I think is quite a strong leader, and if you have that many military actions and maybe went for a more economy focused build, I think it's just extremely strong. He will help him not being the weakest, he will make it that he doesn't fall behind in culture too much. I think that's just a perfect leader for him here. Now H2 starts, and I was a bit unhappy to see that one of the first 2 cards from H2 is actually a copy of strategy. That of course makes it now that DANeo very likely will be able to defend against any aggressive play from me, so he at least has to invest 8 science into it, but it probably will be worthwhile for him, and he is also willing to take the strategy here for 3 civil actions. With the last civil action he will actually build a religion, maybe being a bit afraid of a rebellion, or maybe even having seeded it himself. Now it's my turn. I am at the moment one of the 2 strongest, and I was willing to cede the uncertain borders, as despite DANeo, having sadly now a way to defend against the potential aggression, I will still end up building the Swordsman, as I have now committed to Gutenberg and want to go for those alchemy upgrades slowly. And so I was willing to see the uncertain borders, as I thought there's at least a chance that I will be the strongest. Maybe Grozz at some point will also get stronger, maybe he will go for the Magic Castle, but I at least should be at a low risk of losing to the uncertain borders. Then the Pestilence is revealed, which I was happy to see. I have 2 free population anyway. I will still be able to put one of those into the Swordsman, while Grozz doesn't have a free population. PV4 has one, but has an uprising issue that he at least can fix with playing the reserves for food, for example. And DANeo doesn't have a free population, has already lost one to the Reign of Terror, so I think this Pestilence is maybe best for me here. I use Gutenberg to develop the alchemy, and then it's a bit awkward what I can do this turn. I have quite some free civil actions and can maybe not do that much with them. I basically decided to take 1 card from the row and then play the Cultural Heritage with the last action. As I didn't really like taking Bread and Circuses or Theology here, there's no Pierre in the game for the Bread and Circuses, so I rather just wanted to wait for an H2 Happy Face solution. And I also didn't want to take a late Monarchy when I have now the Colosseum and am actually nicely prepared for both Conmon and Republic. So instead I made the decision to take a yellow card, and as I said, I will only take 1 card from the row. At the end it was a call for me between reserves and the efficient upgrade being more efficient but less flexible, and here also with potentially having some hand space issues, I went with the more flexible reserves that I can just play at any point to make space in my hand, and that I can play for both food. 3 food is exactly what I need to get 1 more population out, or for resources in case I need the resources, and then I play the Cultural Heritage to gain some science and culture. I could still get punished for not taking the efficient upgrade. For example, if a coal at the next turn drops down to the 2 civil action area for me, then if I would have taken the efficient upgrade, I could just take it, develop it, go for an upgrade. But now if that should happen, then I would need to play the reserves first and would not have enough civil actions to go for that. But maybe it's also not that likely that that exact scenario will happen. But of course, generally, I'm on low civil actions. It could be better to maybe take the more civil action efficient yellow card. But then again, I could also end up with some hand space issues. At the end I went with the reserves, but it was a close call for me. I keep some aggressions in hand in the immigration, and I was extremely happy about my draw here because I immediately draw the defensive army, which is of course maybe the 1 card that I want to have the most out of the event deck, with having the Great Wall, with having the Swordsman setup. So now I only need a copy of cannons, and I will have some very big strength potential, and maybe then I can again potentially make those aggressions work. And then maybe having the reserves to get a new population also could turn out to be quite important. Grozz actually tries an aggression against DANeo, is willing to even sacrifice some draws for that, but DANeo has actually the 2 defense cards that he needs to defend against Grozz's aggression. And so can prevent that raid 2, and that's quite a big moment in that game, because if he wouldn't have had those 2 defense cards, and we just saw Grozz using 3, so we had knowledge about some of them already being discarded, and if that raid would have went through, 2 alchemies would have been destroyed, and that would be a very big setback for DANeo. Grozz would get quite a big resource boost, but DANeo has the ability to defend himself against that raid 2 that Grozz has drawn with the Colossus, so that's certainly a crucial moment for those 2 players in the game. And Grozz potentially could have just gone for some alchemy upgrades, but decides against it and wants to have that St. Peter's Basilica. I mean, the Happy Face will allow him to put even another work into strength, maybe getting strongest again. PV4 seeds and opens the developed territory. I actually win that. I have drawn an additional defense card. I have not the most science. So I didn't even go all in, definitely not all in, but also I didn't bid, I think, a Swordsman both of my cards or something. I just bid a little bit, thinking if I win it cheaply, then maybe that's fine. But on the other hand, I have seeded the uncertain borders. I just lost the population to the pestilence, so I can't rebuild a unit immediately. That would cost me some very precious resources anyway, so maybe I actually should have just passed here. That could at the end maybe turn out to be a mistake here, but at least I get an additional yellow token, I get an additional blue token. The 3 signs is quite valuable for me. If a government form is revealed before my turn, then the 3 signs actually makes a difference if I'm able to just go for the government form or not. And with that, it's maybe still fine. I am willing to actually throw the better defense card away to just pay the lowest price resource cost-wise with just sending that warrior away. PV4 has an uprising issue, could play the reserves for food and increase his population, but instead he just takes and finishes the Forbidden City, so he's going for a very high civil action setup, is now already at 8 civil actions, and then with his last civil action he develops the Knights. And that maybe should have been a tell for me, because he could have done something different, taking some cards, and it's a bit of a commitment. He could have also done an iron upgrade, so spending some signs here I think is a big hint that the Dark Ages soon are coming. DANeo develops the strategy, maybe either having taken the hint or from PV4, or maybe just potentially having seen the Dark Ages himself. He then takes the Meiji Castle, and with building a step gets out of corruption, so with getting strategy and the Meiji Castle he will now be quite safe. And during the game I think I didn't take the hint that much, maybe wasn't careful enough here, or maybe was just willing to push anyway. Maybe the Dark Ages are only coming in the next event deck, and the immigration could be extremely helpful for me. I have the most happy face at the moment. If that is revealed quickly, I just gain additional population. It is quite some value for me, but the plan that I have for this turn involves developing coal anyway, so I could have improved my position for Dark Ages. But maybe also not by that much. I would have still lost a bunch of signs, so maybe it is at the end even fine to just see the immigration here, but I think I also didn't catch the hints here and maybe wasn't careful enough, to be honest. So I see it, the Dark Ages are revealed, a good showcase that you have to be very, that you have to take a closer look at your opponent's actions, because you can take such hints and maybe prepare for events better then. And maybe I could have actually developed coal in warfare, but as said, maybe the Dark Ages could also be in the next event deck, and maybe it was just a preparation for that. And at the end I was just willing to push, but I lose now 5 signs. I don't have the biggest production, so that's a very big setback for me. All of my opponents lose very few or no signs, and but I maybe could have had a chance to prepare for that. Winning the developed territory also now doesn't feel that great any longer. The coal is in the row. We can see that in hindsight I maybe should have taken the efficient upgrade, and I could have just gone for a coal upgrade this turn already. Instead I will now use Gutenberg. I mean, I guess I couldn't have used Gutenberg then, so that would have been a bit annoying. I use Gutenberg this turn, take the coal, develop it, and take the efficient upgrade, so that I can start upgrading to coal at the next turn, plus going for another Gutenberg activation. I was hoping that maybe Napoleon or Nobel could be available for me at the next turn, because next turn Gutenberg I will most likely the last time be able to use his ability in a very nice way, and then it would be ideal to replace him. But I thought especially Nobel, maybe also Napoleon, might just be taken away, and then I have to see if there are even more leaders revealed that they can maybe go for. So not ideal losing that many signs to Dark Ages, but at least next turn I will be able to start coal upgrades. I can go for another lab upgrade. I have lost a lot of signs, but maybe I'm in a position where I can also do a revolution. There's also Robespierre who could maybe allow me to go for a strong revolution into Republic especially. And I have the defensive army tactic, so I have still some things going for me, but there were certainly some setbacks, and maybe I also shouldn't have bid for the developed territory. Then I would still be at 13 strength and would be prepared to win the uncertain borders now and maybe get the additional yellow token like that instead of sacrificing something for it. Especially because I have the tactic, and I mean I need the cannons still, but I draw the War over Territories. That's a card that I will certainly keep in hand, combined with the tactic that I'm having. Also I draw the Civil Unrest that I can potentially push into the deck. Grozz this turn finishes the St. Peter's Basilica, takes the breakthrough and builds another warrior, going up to 13 strength, maybe having something to send away for colonies potentially. PV4 doesn't see it here. He knows that the uncertain borders are in there, maybe there are even more strength events coming. He builds a knight, plays the phalanx tactic, and then goes for Napoleon, so he is putting some effort into getting stronger, and with him having had Nostradamus, really it looks like maybe there could even be multiple strength events coming. Of course, Napoleon generally helpful, PV4 is a little bit behind in strength, so he could have gone for Nobel, but then he would be the weakest, so he is willing to sacrifice the additional science that he would get with Nobel in order to get a bit stronger and get an additional military action. He then also upgrades his last mine, takes the efficient upgrade and a wave of nationalism. Now it's DANeo's turn. He seeds, the knowledge of the ancients are revealed. I was very happy to see that, because at that point I could have actually lost the uncertain borders, which really could have made my colony bit quite bad. But I don't get punished here. Instead, the knowledge of the ancients are revealed, and I gain 3 additional science, which is quite helpful for me and maybe helps me getting into a government form quicker. And I maybe got a bit fortunate in the sense that there is something strong available for DANeo, which will mean that there's also something strong available for me. I mean, I guess I will now get Nobel is what I want to say, which I was happy to see. On the other hand, of course, if DANeo would have gone for Nobel here, then I could have had a chance to go for maybe Republic and Robespierre, or I mean, it would have been a bit annoying with my full hand, but it also would be strong for me. So either way, with a bunch of leaders dropping that I can use, I was happy to see that at the next turn I will get now Nobel and will be able to replace Gutenberg already. And DANeo wants to have the quick science boost instead of accumulating some science with Nobel over some turns. Goes for the revolution, finishes the Métier castles to still make sure to not be the weakest, going up to 13 strength, increases his population, takes the opera in hand. There's quite some synergy for it in H3, so maybe it's not bad having a copy of that in hand. And yeah, I mean, that certainly was a big boost for him. Has now a very nice civil and military action count, and a strong science production. At some point can maybe rebuild that mine, and then can maybe have a solid economy. It's my turn. I try to get some additional strength here short term that could help me avoid being the weakest or even being the strongest, winning the uncertain borders. And long term, maybe it could even help me making some wars bigger, but DANeo rejects the pact. I start my turn by using the efficient upgrade, getting a coal upgrade going, but also making sure that I make space in my hand. I can use Gutenberg one last time, and then there is Nobel available to replace him for 1 civil action, which I was extremely happy to see. And I think at the end, Gutenberg indeed worked out very, very nicely, and I think it was worth it here to pay an additional civil action for him over Saladin. I just used him once per turn, and now I've completed my alchemy upgrades very, very cheaply and can replace him now with Nobel, going up to 6 science production, so I think that worked out very well. And thanks to the additional science production from Nobel, I have also enough to go for a government form at the next turn. Now the question is, do I want to get into Republic or Common? With having the Colosseum, the Republic can sometimes be certainly a consideration, sometimes even for an additional civil action. But here I wasn't willing to pay the additional civil action because I have the defensive army tactic. I think I have a lot of aggressive potential also with that war, and with that I thought the additional military actions from the Common are just too valuable for me if I should at some point get a copy of cannons. So I took this Common, then I have a full hand and I can't really do that much. I don't want to develop warfare or irrigation, as that would prevent me from going for the constitutional monarchy at the next turn. And so at the end I just played the reserves for resources. I think I could have even played them for food, but I think I still didn't have knowledge about rats, so that's not really an option, playing it for food. And also the resources could still be very valuable for me, at least even without playing it for food. I have just enough food to increase my population at the next turn. Could have increased my population twice if I played the reserves for food here, but if I increase my population only once, I will still have +1 food production, so maybe I have a chance at some point to still get another population out without playing it for food here, so I think playing it for resources is probably better here. I keep an aggression, a war, a tactic, and 1 event that I can push. Nobel also makes it that I'm not the weakest, which is also extremely strong. However, the Uncertain Borders remain in the deck for now, and I was also happy to see that the Immigration is revealed already. If it would have stayed in the deck a bit longer, maybe one of my opponents would have gotten more happy faces, but with how it went, I am the only one to get an additional population out of that, and I think that was even another reason why I think playing the reserves for food was not really an option, because now I could only increase my population once, because I get one for free, and then I would need 7 food to increase my population twice. So yeah, I think I actually thought about that, and that was another reason why it was very clear for me that I need to play the reserves for resources. Grozz, interestingly, develops the theology, maybe to make space in his hand. It allows him to make space in his hand while still having enough science left to go for the Republic. Of course, having the theology with St. Peter's Basilica not ideal, but it's still a bit more efficient worker-wise, so it can maybe still be fine. He then takes the Revolutionary Idea, which I think is an extremely valuable card for him here with being low in science and in also the frugality. BV4 takes the selective breeding in hand, takes the cannons, develops the cannons, disbands the warrior, builds the cannon, takes the urban growth, and reveals the outdated Napoleonic army tactic going up to 17 strength. He had Nostradamus, he knows that the Uncertain Borders are coming, and with that he's now the strongest instead of the weakest, so I think that makes sense. Has just enough science to get into selective breeding at the next turn if he wants to, but is still relatively low in science, not taking Nobel, also costing him a little bit here. DANeo seeds and opens the historic territory. This time I was not willing to bid. I don't need the happy faces at all at the moment, and I don't want to weaken my military here. PV4 at the end is able to win it for warrior on a colonization card. DANeo sadly is willing to take the second copy of cannons for 3 civil actions, so there's now only 1 copy of cannons left. Of course I was a bit nervous, will I be able to get it? The good news is at least that I'm playing in front of Grozz, who is the other player who is still missing the cannons. And with that I might have better chances than Grozz to get the last copy. DANeo takes the cannons, builds one, commits the population there, but also avoids being the weakest. With that he will stay on only 4 resource production for now, however. He takes the team spots as a happy phase solution and also the urban growth. As you can see, I was not willing to seed here. I think all of the events didn't look too great. I think I will not take the organized religion here, which is maybe a mistake, as a happy face solution could still be very important for me, but I wanted to rather take some yellow cards, and with not taking a happy face solution I didn't want to see the civil unrest. Iconoclasm could maybe be fine, but DANeo losing Robespierre wouldn't hurt him that much. Maybe PV4 can manage without Napoleon, and the additional science from Nobel might still be very valuable for me, and also maybe getting Nobel prizes could be strong. Economic progress could maybe be fine, but I don't know yet how quickly I will get into selective breeding, and so at the end I just decided to not push here. I developed a Conmon with, I can do that thanks to the additional science that I scored at the last turn with Nobel. I upgrade 1 more coal mine, going up to 7 resource production. I have then just 3 resources left to build a swordsman, thanks to having played the reserves for resources at the turn before, making it that I'm not the weakest. It of course means that I don't have a free population to get into cannons, but when I go for the second army, need that swordsman anyway, and I still have enough food now to get 1 more population, so that I can at least build 1 cannon without having to destroy something, and then I think it just makes sense to build the swordsman now. And I will increase my population here, just making sure that I have that population, and also have already spent a civil action, because I think there's a strong possibility for me at the next turn, a strong potential option that I want to be prepared for as nicely as possible, and that's why I'm increasing my population here and taking the patriotism. Because if the cannons are available for me at the next turn, even for 3 civil actions, I can declare the war over territory, play the patriotism, and with that I would have just enough resources to build 2 cannons, I have enough military actions to build 2 cannons and reveal the tactic, and I would gain a very, very big amount of strength. I would have to destroy 1 thing, but I still have that bronze mines. Of course I would ideally still like to upgrade it, but if I get such a strong military push going, then I think it's certainly worthwhile to destroying this mine. I will take some cards from the row, so maybe there's a chance that the cannons will be revealed for Grozz, but if not, then Yeah, I have maybe good chances to get the cannons at my next turn, and then I have good chances to maybe get a war going, which I think could turn out to be extremely strong for me. And so I certainly wanted to be in the setup where I have already a free population, where I have this patriotism so that I have enough resources to build 2 cannons. And after doing that, I have 2 civil actions left, and I decided to take this copy of Richland, which might help me getting into selective breeding, or if I don't destroy this mine, maybe upgrade my last bronze mine to coal. I said I will miss out on the organized religion. I could have maybe not increased my population, but I just wanted to make sure that I get that population and that I have spent that civil action already. And if I indeed should get that war going, that could also help me for my happy faces, gaining some additional yellow tokens. And there is also still another copy of organized religion left. Grozz doesn't need one. DANeo has the team sports. PV4 has 2 happy faces and a forbidden city, so I thought those H2 happy face solutions are probably not contested at all. I keep the war, the aggression, and the tactic, plus a bunch of events. I even draw another war, so I get some big potential here. Grozz seeds, there are no cannons in the row, which I was happy to see. The vast territory is revealed. I did even end up bidding for that. I mean, if I win it very cheaply, I maybe can just get my yellow tokens with that instead of going for potential war, which at that point I don't know if I'm even able to go for it, but I wasn't willing to bid more than 1 unit, and I thought it's very unlikely that it will win me for me anyway. At the end, Grozz is able to win it for just a warrior and a card, so that's very strong for him. Here this turn will increase his population 2 times, 1 time with the frugality, rebuild some units. He takes Catherine, he went into Republic earlier, with the strategy already gone, so Catherine, I think, quite an important leader for him here, so that he is at least on 3 military actions and not stuck on 2. Especially with Lucy and Shishka, so he might be a bit in trouble with the military. Increases his population again, builds the theology, and with that has enough happy faces for quite a while. Also takes a breakthrough to get even more science. Doesn't elect Catherine yet, but I guess there's a good chance that he will get another H2 turn. No cannons revealed yet. I was really looking hoping that maybe the cannons will now be revealed before my turn. PV4 seeds, and there are actually the reds, so it was very important that I increased my population at the turn before, and I'm also a bit lucky with the timing here. And yeah, PV4 is quite a bit unlucky with the timing here, because the last event in the deck are the Uncertain Borders. He has knowledge about it, he has seen it with Nostradamus, he has seen this catastrophe coming. But now he just doesn't have an efficient way to get stronger. He could destroy something, maybe a lab, maybe the religion, maybe he could consider it, I don't know, to build a cannon and get stronger again. Maybe it could be worthwhile for him, but he decides against it here, doesn't want to destroy anything, and I mean at some point he will maybe upgrade his religion to organized religion, and it's still 3 resources lost and a bunch of cultural production, and losing the labs would hurt just quite a lot. So he decides to not get stronger here. Maybe there's a chance that DANeo doesn't get stronger and doesn't seed at his turn or something, but he, I think, wasn't weakest for almost, or I think even for all of the other H1 events, even at some point the strongest, but now with the Uncertain Borders being the last event in the deck, he is now in danger of losing it if DANeo should see it. And DANeo does indeed see it, so the Uncertain Borders are revealed. Grozz will profit from it, PV4 will lose a yellow token. DANeo goes for the navigation, takes the selective breeding and the frugality, and what you can see in the row here is also, of course, that a copy of cannons is coming down the row. A lot of cards were revealed by both PV4 and DANeo, and with that I can go for that war. The question was, of course, which player do I go against, but it was relatively clear for me. DANeo is just too safe. He has the Amici Castle, he can potentially build 3 cannons and have a fortifications tactic, so he could even win the war, I think, if he sacrifices. PV4 I had to at least consider, because he is lacking the science of going for the Rifleman, so that is somewhat bad for him, but he can potentially just destroy a bunch of stuff going for another outdated Napoleonic army tactic. He would still lose the war, so he could certainly be considered, but I think Grozz is just the most vulnerable. He has enough science to get into something like Rifleman, but he will lose the Anshishka now, and he has Catherine, but he has only 3 military actions to work with. He can't that easily go into any strong tactic. And yeah, with that I thought against him I probably should get the biggest war going, and so I declared this war territory against him, taking the cannons, playing the patriotism, destroying this mine, building 2 cannons, revealing the tactic, going up to 34 strength, out of the sudden being extremely threatening for my opponents. The next turn I can even follow up potentially with the War technology. I could have declared the War technology also now, but now that I don't increase my food production, I would have an uprising issue at the next turn if I don't get some additional yellow tokens. So I think it's mandatory that if I go for that play, I go for the war territory, and then at the next turn I can maybe go for a follow-up war or maybe a follow-up aggression. So that's certainly quite strong for me. Then I have 1 civil action left. I have some decent science production. I'm at the moment stuck on 6 civil actions, so I thought just picking up this justice system should be the best thing to do. I draw the politics of strength in the raid. Having another aggression could be nice. Now it's Grozz's turn. At the beginning of his turn, H3, or at the end after my turn, H3 will start. Grozz will get some draws to the Colossus, and he will get something that helps him a little bit here. And that is the military alliance that he sadly gets and offers it to PV4. And the 3 additional strength will actually make it that he loses 1 yellow token less. So a bit unfortunate, but yeah, I'm still getting a big war out of that here. So still, I won't complain. Grozz goes for Catherine, is actually willing to destroy a farm here, which is fine for now. He is doesn't have any famine issues, but as soon as he loses the war, he has some famine issues, so needs to find a way to fix it. With going for cavalryman, I think it's a clear tell what tactic he has. It's probably the best tactic that he could have for himself, and it's the Hussar's tactic going up to 25 strength, so sadly he did manage to go for a relatively solid amount of strength with the military alliance plus the Hussar's tactic, and with that will just barely only lose 2 yellow tokens instead of 3. And then with the last civil action he takes the scientific method. And yeah, we are now at the beginning of H3, so maybe time to take a quick look at the overview. I think positions are somewhat equal, but now of course my military push will maybe shake things up a little bit, and we are in the middle among this push, so maybe not the ideal point to take a look at the standings, but culture-wise we are relatively close. Grozz has a bit of a lead, has also the biggest production together with DANeo. Then economy-wise, every player has still a bit of a weakness. PV4 and Grozz have very low science production. DANeo and I haven't increased our food production. We all have a decent amount of civil actions. I might soon be able to go into the justice system, and we all have similar amount of resource production. DANeo has a little bit less, but has the most resources saved up. So I think economy-wise we are relatively relatively close. But of course I have now the 34 strength, and if I should manage to get a lot out of this military push, maybe another successful war, maybe 1 or 2 aggressions, then I think things could be looking good for me. But I'm also maybe slowly falling behind in culture. I still, at the moment, I'm somewhat low in population, but I will at least get some yellow tokens, and I was hoping to get the copy of selective breeding. Actually, now that Grozz didn't take it, it's guaranteed that I will be able to get it. Thanks to the rich land, I will be able to go for 2 upgrades, and then I have at least fixed my food income. So, yeah, I would say overall it's still relatively close. And now it might depend on how, for myself especially, how much can I get out of the strength push, how much damage will do to my opponents. And yeah, that was of course now quite exciting to see how my other opponents will respond, if they will increase their strength a lot or if they will do something different. PV4 at his turn will go for the Harvard College, finishes it using the engineering genius, so he doesn't increase his strength, but again he didn't really have an easy way to do it, and the Harvard College is just such a big boost that I think he kinda has to go for that here. Takes the reserves and has with the Harvard College fixed his biggest weakness. DANeo seeds and the scientific breakthrough is revealed, and we see here another reason why PV4 went for that Harvard College. I mean, I'm not totally certain if he has still seen this event with Nostradamus, to be honest, but him not seeding and going for the Harvard College certainly looks like he might have had knowledge about it, and out of the sudden he started his last turn with 2+2, now he's at 12+5, so that Harvard College really doing a lot for PV4. DANeo gets an early copy of Mechanized Agriculture here. I, of course, also could have been quite interested in taking that, but he is taking it away. He's willing to go for it over the copy of Selective Breeding, goes for an upgrade, takes the Organized Religion, upgrades one religion so that he fixes his uprising issues. With going for the Organized Religion, however, he takes it away from me, meaning that for now I don't have a Happy Face solution, which could end up being a bit problematic, but at least I won't have any uprising issue thanks to the yellow tokens that I will get from the war. Both DANeo and PV4 didn't increase their strength. DANeo has at least the Image Castle. At my turn, I will steal 2 yellow tokens from Grozz. I thought about going for War over Technology now, but I don't really have an easy way to increase my strength. I rather want to fix my food income now, and with that, I didn't want to sacrifice anything to build more strength, and if I don't build more strength, then the war might just not do that much. I mean, I could go against Grozz maybe, but he could make it quite close, I think, and every player can threaten enough so that the war could end up being not that great, and with that I rather decided to go against aggressions, and I think the player that is the most vulnerable for an aggression here is PV4. I will take 5 science away from him. And together with the scientific breakthrough, I also have quite a lot of science saved up now. I could have also considered Grozz as the target of an aggression. He had 3 draws with the Colossus. If he has 1, he could either have 2 H2 defense cards, and then he can defend, or he could have 1 H2 defense card, and maybe then has drawn out of the 3 cards an H3 defense card, which is possible, but also I think it could be likely that the aggression goes through. But PV4 would either need 4 H2 defense cards, or then depending on how many H2 defense cards he has, also 1 or multiple H3 defense cards, and same as Grozz, he drew 3. Of course, we know that one of the draws of Grozz was the military alliance, but yeah, I thought PV4, I have a higher chance of success when I go for that spy, so I go for it, and it also is successful. Now I even have enough science that I could consider going for both the selective breeding and the civil service that is in the row. Going into a setup where I have 8 civil actions. But despite having this option, I decided against it. Instead, I will go for 2 food upgrades and I will go for the justice system. I have that already in hand. I would need to pay 3 additional civil actions here, so that needs some turns to be worth it. And then I also have to invest additional science into it, and I have less civil actions this turn to do some other things. With the last 2 civil actions, I will now take the rifleman, the cavalryman, which leaves me very nicely prepared for some H3 tactics, especially the positional army and modern army, and also I have the Colosseum, so I might be able to develop those techs relatively cheaply, score some culture with the Colosseum, and also we shouldn't forget that I have Nobel. There might be Nobel prizes at some point. I have discarded the iconoclasm, so I know that Nobel won't be removed by that event, so at some point there, unless I lose a Nobel to the end of the age, there will be Nobel prizes, and then those extremely cheap technologies will just be extremely helpful for me to make sure that I can get some Nobel prizes, and also then having invested less science maybe into such a technology is also just more worthwhile. So while normally I think getting the civil service is just quite strong, and early in H3 if you have enough science for it, I think here I just have the justice system in hand, and I think that's the better way to go. So I take the rifleman, I develop the justice system, and I take the cavalryman. And at the next turn I have just enough food to increase my population. If I draw the right tactics, and at some point in the war, I certainly could just continue with this game being a strength push for me. If not, I might have to find some ways to score some culture, but maybe going for some science production and doing something with Nobel prizes and those cheap technologies could be one way to go for. I actually discard the war over technology, keeping the international trade agreement, which we will have to see if I find the time to even offer that, as my politics actions at this point are relatively precious. I draw 2 defense cards if there's a colony coming that could help me potentially winning it. Grozz upgrades the knight using the military action of Catherine, and then he will replace her with Gandhi, making him a bit safer. For the moment I have 5 military actions, so I can't declare a war against him now, and playing aggressions against him would cost me almost all or all of my draws, so that is quite a big cost for me, as I am in a position where I just want to draw a lot of cards to maybe get a tactic in a war. So with having Gandhi, Grozz should be relatively safe, at least for a moment here. He then takes the Revolutionary Idea and the Urban Growth. And he loses 4 culture to the famine, having found no fix towards that issue yet. PV4 seeds, the freedom of movement is revealed, and he doesn't find a way to use it. He ends up going for the scientific method here. Goes for 2 upgrades, increases his science production even more, increases his population, takes Marie Curie, but before electing her, using the military action of Napoleon to build another cannon, then going for Marie Curie. So he is going for quite a strong economical play, but also playing it maybe a bit greedily, with now still being quite behind in strength. So I can maybe go for another aggression potentially at my turn, but maybe again it was just too expensive to go for 3 more units or something and a Napoleonic army to be safe, so he just goes for an economical play, hoping that maybe it won't be punished, or if it is punished, that maybe it's not punished heavily enough. Now it's DANeo's turn. He cedes, opens the Independence Declaration. BB4 is the weakest, will lose the historic territory, so I think again he would have not lost to that when he ceded at his turn, so also a bit of an unfortunate timing. Losing the happy face could end up being annoying for him. DANeo, did he find a way to use the freedom of movement? He used it to move his swordsmen into cannons. Interestingly, but maybe just gives him a bit more strength for now. Copies the defensive army tactic, being at 23 strength now. Takes the tanks in hand, the efficient upgrade, and the urban growth, and increases his population. And then at my turn, I saw those computers dropping down to 1 civil action for me. And I thought it's just too strong to upgrade to those, and then maybe going for a bit of a science setup with Nobel. And I can do this while taking the military theory, so also keeping my military options maybe alive. Also having that military theory so that also warring Grozz could be a possibility for me. And I thought it's just too strong for me to get additional resources this turn, that I have to try that raid against PV4, because if I get the additional resources, then I can go for 2 upgrades. I generally have a lot more resources, and that will just improve my turn by a lot, while it also does a lot of damage to PV4. So I went for the raid here. It is successful. I will destroy a scientific method and a religion. That's quite a big setback for PV4. And with the additional resources, I can go for 2 computer upgrades, going up to 12 science production. And then with the remaining civil actions, I took the military theory, and the last civil action was interesting. My first instinct was to I could increase my population playing it civil action efficient, but my first instinct was to take the endowment here, because I am behind in culture and likely I will be able to play it for 6 culture, and then I think it's probably worthwhile picking that up. But the thing is, I have now gone for those computers. PV4 and Grozz have already committed to a leader. The 2 leaders that I probably will get, or that I am now waiting for, are Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. And generally there will be Nobel Prizes, likely. And with all of that, I came to the conclusion that instead of getting the 6th culture from the endowment, I rather want to have that copy of tanks available. Developing that will score me 2 culture with the Colosseum. It's another very cheap tech, maybe making it easier to go for another Nobel Prize. And if I get Bill Gates, maybe it could end up not being that worthwhile. But at least it's a better unit, and with Bill Gates I will have a lot of resources, so maybe it could have some advantages in that sense. But if I should get Steve Jobs, then I think having another cheap technology and scoring some culture with the Colosseum could just be too strong. Additionally, it's a 4-player game. It could certainly happen that maybe someone could end up ceding the impact of technology, or maybe I draw it for myself. And with that, I also could potentially score 4 additional points for that, or be a very cheap tech for that. And with that, I actually decided that I rather want to have the tanks to be nicely prepared for Nobel Prizes and Steve Jobs instead of the endowment. Keep my colonization cards, the politics of strength and the international agreement. I draw the impact of technology, so I was immediately rewarded for my decision here, and very happy that I have done this decision. Also generally, of course, a great draw. I just went into computers, I have some technologies already in hand, and now I have that strong payoff card, and I also have a war, so yeah, I was very happy about those draws. Grozz Seeds opens the prosperity, some food is gained, not too much, but a little bit of help for all the players, especially for Grozz maybe, who can maybe has now a bit of help for his uprising issues. He goes into computers as well, goes for 2 upgrades that gets him out of corruption, takes the mechanized agriculture and the civil service. PV4 offers a peace treaty to Grozz, both will get an additional culture from now on. He will play the wave of nationalism, develops the organized religion, builds 1, develops the rifleman, builds 1, upgrades 1, is now at 26 strength, takes the air forces, so he is now finally somewhat safe from an aggression, only would need 1 H3 defense card to defend himself. DANeo Seeds opens the immigration, but no one has any unhappy workers. He will use the frugality to increase his population 2 times, builds a swordsman going up to 33 strength, takes the engineering and the Manhattan project, and goes for another food upgrade. Maybe if the Red Cross is late, then he has a chance to finish the Manhattan project, and then with the food from the mechanized agriculture go for the Red Cross. And he does know whether he gets air forces yet, so the additional strength from the Manhattan project could also just be very valuable for him. Now it's my turn. I could see the impact of tech already, but it might be revealed too early. I rather want to have some time preparing myself for that, especially as you can see I will get Steve Jobs here, so I was happy to see that. I don't want to try an aggression. Going for a war doesn't really work that nicely, or doesn't really work at all. I could offer the international trade agreement, but I am at the moment the strongest, and I thought if I see the politics of strength now, there is a chance that it will be revealed relatively quickly and that I just get 5 additional draws, which could potentially be very valuable for me. So I decided on putting the politics of strength into the deck. There's actually a vast territory revealed, which I maybe don't even need that much, but could still end up being very helpful, especially because there's a Red Cross still left in the deck. There are only 2 wonders left that I can realistically go for after my turn. I don't find the time to pick up the fast food chains this turn, as I will go for Steve Jobs, and then there's only Spaceflight and Red Cross left, so there's a reasonable chance that I will end up getting Red Cross, and with that I thought the colony is still quite strong for me. If I remembered correctly though, I was not willing to send a cannon into it, only a swordsman and all of my defense cards, and that is enough for me to win it. I even can keep 1 H3 defense card in hand. And then this turn I think it's just too strong to go for Steve Jobs. I have all of those cheap techs, there will be Nobel Prizes, I have an impact of technology in hand. I think it's just the best to go all in on that. And in addition to that, also his happy faces will be very useful. I mean, now that I won the Vast, I don't need them that urgently, but at some point I certainly will need some more happy faces, so Steve Jobs is quite strong for me here, and maybe I prefer him here even in this position over Bill Gates, as there's not that much time left to do something with the resources of Bill Gates. I mean, I guess I could then maybe go for more military heavy play, trying to do something with the war, but I might still either need an H3 tactic or a copy of Air Forces to really make that war quite big. I mean, I have that much population, maybe I could just go for a lot of defensive armies also. But here I go for Steve Jobs, electing him. I want to develop the military theory. I also developed the Rifleman, scoring my first Nobel Prize, scoring some culture with the Colosseum. I will increase my population. First I thought I will now build a Rifleman directly, but I think there's no reason to do it. Building a Swordsman just makes me strongest as well. I don't know how much I need that 1 strength, and I might just need my resources elsewhere, especially if I don't get a Red Cross and instead get a space flight, which is a possibility and which would also work nicely with the blade or setup that I'm going here towards, or that I have now. And I have that many military actions. With the military theory I have now 8 military actions. There's no benefit in building a Rifleman directly. I can just make the less committive move of building a Swordsman and easily just upgrade all of those Swordsmen later on if I think that I need those. So I didn't build a Rifleman directly here, instead just building a Swordsman, giving me with more resources. Before I won the vast territory, I think I went for a play where I just maybe at the end of my turn was able to pick up both rockets and the engineering genius, getting a cheap tech and getting the engineering genius, which might be very helpful for me in case I get the space flight. Here, however, I can only take one of those cards, and I at the end decided to go for the rockets, just a very cheap tech, and with the impact of technology, it's probably just too strong. Means, however, that without the engineering genius, it could be somewhat expensive for me to go for the space flight, so I might need to hope that I get the Red Cross now. I don't increase my population. I could have even, if I increase my population, I can't build 5 steps, which is maybe not too realistic anyway, because for that to happen, the Red Cross needs to drop at least to the 2 civil action area, but it's possible, and so I wanted to leave myself with enough food to be prepared for that possibility. With having Steve Jobs and Nobel Prizes and culture from the Colosseum, I'm immediately catching up. I was behind at the beginning of my turn, but now I have already overtaken PV4. I draw even more wars and the modern army tactic, so Vlada is certainly pushing me into a certain direction here. Grozz Seeds opens the autonomous territory. This time was even willing to build a cannon, but thinking that it's likely not enough to win it, and I just don't want to get too distracted here. I also know that the politics of strength is coming, so getting weaker here could also end up being quite bad. So it's fine that Grozz wins it, and at least he has to pay a bit of a price for it. He interestingly takes 5 resources out of the colony, which helps him to rebuild some units immediately. He rebuilds 1 cavalryman, going up to 27 strength, goes for the civil service, goes for the mechanized agriculture, scoring a Nobel Prize, increasing his food production so that he can increase his population at the next turn, takes the military build-up, the reserves, and the engineering genius. PV4 at his turn will increase his population, builds the knights so that he is now the 2nd strongest instead of the weakest, also gets him out of corruption, and then he is just willing to invest a lot of his civil actions into taking the space flight, and also takes the patriotism to maybe be a bit more safe. And no, I think taking that wonder probably makes sense. That means that from now on, and with the Hollywood being discarded, the Red Cross will be the last wonder that is left in the deck. DANeo Seeds opens the politics of strength, which I'm able to win, so I'm happy to see that. The draws, however, are not the most exciting. The impact of wonders is at least a seedable impact, but also not really that great for me, especially PV4 is even better prepared for that impact. Another war, so I could go for a lot of wars, but there won't be enough time left for that. DANeo takes Chaplain this turn, develops the opera, builds an opera, going up to 11 culture production, takes the reserves, increases his population, builds a step of the Manhattan Project to get out of corruption. Now it is my turn. I can't really go for a war this turn, and so I think it's good to put the impact of technology into the deck. And sadly, the Ravages of Time is revealed. It's even the latest event, so there was no hope of it being farther in the deck. It still hurts because I have just enough science. I had to develop cavalrymen and tanks this turn, with Steve Jobs scoring another Nobel Prize. Sadly, those attacks will lose the discount and also the 2 culture that I would get when developing them, so losing the Colosseum is quite painful, but losing the Great Wall was definitely not an option here, as I am actually potentially even a little bit in danger for war here, as we will see at the end of the turn. And I had, of course, to consider if maybe it could be an option for me to set up for war for myself at the next turn. However, in order to go for somewhat reasonable war, I would need to take both reserves and air forces, and Grozz, after winning the autonomous territory and having gone for the civil service, has 10 civil actions, has plenty of hand space, and if I take 2 cards from the row that aren't in the discard spot, he can just end the game, or end the age, so... And just taking reserves or just taking air forces doesn't bring me that far, and also generally I thought maybe it's just better for me to gather my points peacefully here with some Steve Jobs activations, and ideally the Red Cross. I will only take 1 card from the row, so that Grozz won't be able to end the age. We will also talk about at the end of my turn maybe whether or why I thought it's beneficial for me that the game has an additional turn. But with also another reason why it's good for me to take only 1 card is also that there will be only 2 cards revealed for Grozz, so there's a low chance that the Red Cross is revealed before his turn. PV4 has committed to the space flight, he can't take the Red Cross away, DANeo can only take the red cross away if it drops down to 1 civil action for him, which is rather unlikely, because he needs 3 civil actions to play the reserves, develop engineering, finish the Manhattan project, and then he can only take the red cross if it's available for 1. So I thought I have good chances to get the red cross here. And yeah, so this turn I increased my population, built a religion, took the revolutionary idea on the professional spots, getting a cheap tech that is on a discard spot, taking the revolutionary idea. I thought about taking, instead of the revolutionary idea, another tech, but didn't really work out with my calculations. I think the additional science from the revolutionary idea could end up being more valuable. And then I will again increase my population. I still have enough food to potentially build a whole red cross at my next turn. I build another religion, getting more culture production going, but also being prepared for some impacts. I'm better prepared for impact of balance. Also, at least thanks to losing the Colosseum to the Ravages of Time. Definitely hurt. I would have played my turn a bit differently. I would have gone for a Nobel Prize with developing those 2 techs with the Colosseum discount and culture bonus. But it's not possible. I can't go for a Nobel Prize this turn now. And but at least it gives me some culture production, which could help me for the impact of balance and of course potentially the impact of culture. For that the religions help. The religions help for potential impact of happiness. The religions help for an impact of harmony. So I thought building those is just quite strong. And with the last civil action I will actually develop the cavalryman, paying a resource with Steve Jobs. And I did some calculations about my next turns and about the science that I will have, and I thought maybe spending the 6 science and cavalryman doesn't make a difference on how many H3 technologies I will be able to develop, and so I just wanted to use 1 civil action now to develop that 1 technology with Steve Jobs. Because what I was hoping towards now was to go for the red cross at the next turn. If it's on 3, I can build 4 steps. If it falls down to 2 or 1, then I can just build it completely. And I could of course take a bunch of cards from the row and then say, okay, that will be a fine last turn, but the problem is of course if I spend all of my actions to build a red cross, then I can't develop any techs, and it's just extremely valuable for me with Steve Jobs, with the Nobel Prize, with the impact of technology. So I thought it's a lot better for me if I can finish the red cross at the next turn, or at least build 4 steps of it, and then in 2 turns still have a chance to develop some technologies. And with that I thought it's good to not let Grozz end the age, and also it's good to give him a low chance that a red cross will be revealed on his turn, because if it is revealed I think he will take it away, but if it is not revealed then the other 2 opponents can't take it away. So I thought there's a good chance that I will now get a red cross at the next turn. But I needed to be careful here, because especially PV4 is not that badly set up for war. Could potentially maybe do some military heavy stuff, because there is another patriotism left in the deck. He could maybe take and play it with the Harvard College as another patriotism, so there's a chance that he can go for a war and 2 air forces. He could of course also have a hybrid war. Maybe he could end up doing something with the military theory, but if he goes for 2 air forces he will end up being on 59 strength, which is quite threatening actually. And maybe I actually played it a bit too greedily here, because that could be quite a bad possibility for me. The best defense that I can come up with is building another cannon and 2 warriors to get another outdated defensive army tactic, but that only puts me at 8 strength from the units and another 3 from the tactics, so I'm only at 48. So that is certainly a bit of greed that I'm going towards here, but I didn't find a nice turn where I'm a lot better prepared for the military. I mean, I could, instead of taking revolutionary on professional sports, maybe end up taking reserves or something, or maybe air forces, but I think the reserves is even stronger, as it's just my strength potential is what matters most here, and just building another army with the Great Wall gives me more strength than just building an air force. And maybe I should have played it more safe here, but I have also knowledge about 4 wars, so the chance of PV4 having a war is maybe not that high. It's also not guaranteed that he gets this copy of Patriotism, and we are in a game where it just matters a lot to win it, to move on to the finals of the tournament. So I was willing to take a bit of a risk in order to play it greedily, in order to, if I don't get punished for it, maybe have some chances to actually win the thing if I get a red cross plus and a lot of culture with Steve Jobs plus a good impact of tech. I thought I am in a position, if things go right for me, I could have good chances to win it actually now. But yeah, being only at 9 resources is maybe a tiny bit too dangerous here. I draw some impacts, which maybe could end up being seedable, but not very big for me likely. Grozz takes the reserves, the military theory, the revolutionary idea, develops the military theory, builds a religion, takes the oil, and then plays the reserves. And most importantly, the red cross was not revealed at his turn, and also the last copy of Patriotism is also not revealed, but there's now a decent chance that it will be revealed on PV4's turn, so I was a bit afraid if he would go for a war now. But luckily he doesn't. There would have been actually a Patriotism revealed. Let me check again if he would have even enough civil actions. Maybe I forgot to think about the Ravages of Time for his turn when I thought about this. He can take Patriotism for 3, play the Patriotism, develop Air Forces. I guess he would need to for the Patriotism for 2 civil actions, because he loses either way a civil action regardless of which wonder he chooses to lose. But I think maybe I forgot about this actually when playing the game. So I was maybe a little bit less in danger, but still somewhat in danger, and even building 1 Air Force already makes things quite close between us. But luckily I don't get punished here. I was very relieved to see that, and also was very happy to see the red cross coming down the row. PV4 takes this Patriotism, takes the professional sports and the democracy. Has enough science to develop both democracy and the professional sports. Or actually, no, he's missing 2 science in order to do that, so he has to see whether he goes for the democracy or just a Nobel Prize and finishes spaceflight. Now it's DANeo's turn. Age 4 will start. He develops the engineering, plays the reserves for resources, finished the Manhattan Project. We can see here that he is missing 1 civil action to pick up the red cross. Luckily it didn't drop down to 1 civil action for him. But it will actually drop down into the 1 civil action area for myself, which I was extremely happy to see. DANeo takes a bunch of cards, and with the amount of cards that all of my opponents have taken, it almost would have been guaranteed for the red cross to be in at least those 2 areas so that they can completely finish it. So the biggest danger was that it was maybe revealed on Grozz's turn. I this turn see the impact of wonders into the deck. Now that I get the red cross, it should be at least fine to see it, and PV4 gets the most out of my opponents out of it, but he is also a bit behind in culture, and I thought that maybe he is not the biggest contender for the win of this game. So I see it. An impact of variety is revealed. That is also 1 impact where building those religions helped me a little bit. So I gain 14 culture out of that, which is at least fine. Only DANeo gets more out of this. And in this turn I can just finish the red cross. There are 5 colonies in play, so I score a total of 35 culture, which is quite strong. And I have even a civil action left. It was a decision for me between multimedia and satellites. With the multimedia I could develop them at the next turn, in addition to 2 other techs. Sadly I have not enough science to go for 4 technologies. So now actually developing the cavalryman turns out to be a bit bad. The thing is, I did not expect that I can finish the red cross and still have a civil action left, and then I thought in my last turn basically almost all cards might already be gone. And if I don't get a red cross, because maybe Grozz takes it away, then I can maybe I have a chance to set myself up with building an additional lab or something in order to then get enough technologies going. But now I have even the chance to grab another technology. I could go for the multimedia, build 1 at the next turn. It could help me for some impacts and just gives me 3 culture production. At the end, however, I decided to go for the satellites, and the main reason to do this is that instead of building a multimedia, I then can just build a professional sports at the next turn, which also helps me for some impacts and gives me +3 for the impact of competition, which I thought might be the impact that I want to put into the deck. I also have the impact of agriculture, but DANeo has 2 upgraded mechanized agriculture. Grozz could maybe build a mechanized agriculture at his last turn if he feels like an impact of agriculture could be in the deck, and so I thought impact of competition might be more likely my seed, especially because I will maybe also have some resources left to upgrade some units, and with that I thought it should be the right call to go for the professional sports, and then I can just go for the satellites, which also is very helpful for some impacts. Grozz seeds and opens the impact of harmony, so I again get rewarded for building those 2 religions earlier, making it at least a plus 16 impact for me. Grozz will increase his population, he will go for a copy of multimedia, builds 1, takes the modern infantry, the fundamentalism and the rockets, going up to 12 culture production, but his big downside is now that he doesn't get any wonder. After his turn, before the final turn, we can see I am already in the lead, and I will be able to go for some more Steve Jobs culture and a Nobel Prize at my last turn. PV4 seeds and opens the impact of happiness, which the religions also helped me with, so those religions doing a lot of work. PV4 then plays the reserves, develops the professional sports in the Air Force, scores Nobel Prize, finishes the space flight for 20 points. I was hoping that DANeo would not seed now, because then, to play it safe, I probably would not be able to push an impact into the deck, as there would be the chance that the impact of technology is revealed before I can develop all of my techs. Maybe I could risk it, but I think the situation is now looking good for me, so I probably shouldn't take such a risk, but I was hoping that DANeo maybe just wouldn't seed, and I get lucky here, or DANeo doesn't have anything useful and doesn't seed, so at my turn I will be able to seed. I also know that the Iconoclasm is out. That could also be a very bad H2 event that I could get hit by, losing Steve Jobs, so that I lose basically 12 culture with the 3 technologies that I will develop this turn. But that is not in there, so I just see that, and it's even a beneficial event for me, the National Pride. I'm able to win now after having gone for the Red Cross. As you can see, I did in seed the impact of competition, which should be the best seed for me. I go for the satellites, for the professional sports, the rockets. I'm sadly missing 1 tiny bit of science to even go for the tanks as well. So I, in hindsight, shouldn't have developed a cavalryman, but I didn't know it at that point when I developed them, that I would have a chance to even grab another technology. I then increased my population, build a professional sports, and then just upgrade some units to get more strength. There could be a potential impact of strength in there, and also of course to gather some more points for the impact of competition. And then I play the revolutionary idea, but I'm 1 sign short on developing the tanks. Grozz plays the military build-up, develops the fundamentalism. Interestingly, I mean, he had 21 signs. He could have gone for a Nobel Prize, right? But I guess he probably wants to play around the impact of strength here, is going for some destruction. Maybe thought that with the turn that I've gone for, it's likely that an impact of strength is in there, and so he is playing around it, or he has maybe even pushed that impact in the deck himself. And now, before the final impacts, we can see that I have actually quite a significant lead. And then it's quite close between Grozz and DANeo. PV4 is a bit behind, but not that much that he doesn't have a chance to overtake maybe some of his opponents, but he's definitely too much behind to still have a chance to win the game. And yeah, at this point I think it's looking quite good for me, especially because the impact of technology is in there, which is quite strong. But it's even better for Grozz actually, so yeah, he also scores quite well in it. Gets somewhat punished for going for the fundamentalism line. We will have to see if impact of strength is in there, but he would have scored another 4 points with the Nobel Prize and another 4 for the impact of tech if he would have just developed some techs here. And yeah, still he scores 4 more than me in this impact, and has now a bit of a lead before DANeo and PV4. There's the impact of wonders, which gives me plus 11. DANeo gets 11 as well, and PV4 gets plus 14. Then there's the impact of balance, which gives PV4 the most. He is getting closer to DANeo now, and Grozz is getting a bit closer to DANeo as well again. There's the impact of competition, which is giving PV4 2 more points against DANeo. And for the impact of competition, of course, building some units was quite helpful for Grozz. There's the impact of science, which gives Grozz the most, probably seeded by him. I at least get plus 10. DANeo gets plus 0, PV4 plus 5. So PV4 and DANeo have now the same amount of culture. And the last impact is the impact of progress. So developing the satellites actually got rewarded also for that impact. I get plus 22, Grozz plus 18, DANeo plus 18, and PV4 doesn't have a big impact of progress. He just gets plus 4, and with that he came close to DANeo, but with that impact DANeo makes sure that he at least finishes third in this game. And yeah, at the end I'm actually able to win this game. Grozz finishes second, DANeo third, PV4 in fourth position. And when entering H3, I mean, I knew that I of course had some potential, but I still was surprised that I won this game now, even with a bit of a lead. I think generally this game things went quite nicely for me. The event order was mostly beneficial for me. I had good draws. I drew the defensive army tactic very early. I drew some aggressive cards together with it, and I got Steve Jobs computers. And with that could do some nice stuff with the Nobel Prizes, so quite a strong Steve Jobs game here. Gutenberg was quite strong, actually the second 4-player game now in a row where Gutenberg has done some nice work, and also the second game that I actually won, so he is starting to collect some good stats for maybe the next year's overview. And with the defensive army plus Great Wall, that just puts you in a strong position if you have the ability to get that going. And I think Colosseum and Great Wall worked out quite well for me here. The additional military action I think was quite helpful for me to be able to go for some aggressive play and still draw some cards. The happy faces were quite useful, so I think that worked out quite well for me. And then the masonry allowing me to then also finish the Red Cross efficiently at the last turn, and saving some civil actions and resources over the course of the game. Actually not that many resources, I didn't build that many urban buildings. And no, so I think things went just relatively well for me overall, and despite the big Dark Ages loss, which was a bit of a setback, with the strength push that I managed to go for, while still getting into a solid economy at least, plus then getting computers and Steve Jobs was just enough to at the end win the game. Of course also getting the Red Cross. And yeah, I'm of course happy. I will be moving on to the final 3-player game, and we can maybe see how the other 2 games went to see which my 2 opponents will be for the finals. And when we take a look at the result, we interestingly can see that the 2 players who could actually choose which player count and against which players they wanted to play, it didn't go well for them. Wolves chose to go for a 3-player game against Ipogi and Saru, but it was an extremely close game, to be honest, so it probably could have easily gone into a different way, but at the end he loses the game. Ipogi is able to win it, Saru finishes second, and Matapesher chose to have a 2-player game against A440, maybe catching or maybe hitting the world champion at his weakest player count, but that also didn't go well for Matapesher. He lost the 2-player game, meaning that in the final 3-player game I will be playing against Ipogi and A440, so 2 of the last year's World Championship medalists, and also of course the World Champion himself. And yeah, so that should be a very interesting 3-player game. I hope you're looking forward to that. It's still ongoing, so we have to wait until it has finished, but yeah, that should be exciting, and let's see if I maybe can even win the tournament at the end and collect actually some points for the leaderboard. Alright, then I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch. And yeah, then thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.